So the purpose of today's presentation is to talk about how to handle error codes when making RESTful calls with Camunda 8. So I'm going to go and create a really simple BPMN diagram. We'll just have these two steps for now. This will be a RESTful call. This will be just a view step. So here we are. This will actually be RESTful outbound command connector. So this will be a RESTful outbound connector. This is the URL. Now I happen to know that this particular URL will return a 404 error because the resource it's looking for does not exist. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to turn this into a user task. And let's talk about what happens if I don't do any sort of error handling at all. So now I'm going to run this, take a look at it. You can see that it's stuck here. It's probably retrying a couple of times, and then I get an exception. And the exception is, hey, I got a 404. Okay, so how can I handle this? So there are, in fact, there's more than one way to handle this. The first thing that I can do is to actually come into my code here and write an error expression. So my error expression is going to be something like if error.code equals 404, then I'm going to throw a BPMN error, 404, resource. Actually, let me type this in here so it's a little more. Resource could not be found, else just return empty. Okay, so what that does is that when we run into a 404 error in particular, we're actually going to throw a BPMN error that can actually be caught by the process. And this is because sometimes we expect certain kinds of errors and we want to take a deliberate action. So in this case, we want to throw a BPMN error. And now that I've got this, I'm actually going to come in and I am going to attach an error boundary event to this guy. And this will be my error handler, which for the sake of argument, I'm just going to make into a human task. And here we go. So now what I expect is that when I run this, the error, the exception will be caught, the error will be caught, and it will actually activate this error handler. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to run it. Okay. So as we're looking at this, we can actually see that the exception caught, and it actually brought us down to our error handler. Now, one thing that I did sort of fast, and you may have missed in all of this, is that I did not actually give a code to this exception handler. So when I came here in this, I did not give. So one thing I did sort of fast, and you may have missed it, is that I didn't actually assign a global error reference to this particular exception. So I did not come here. So basically what that means is that any sort of BPMN error that's thrown will be caught by this guy. He's sort of like a global catch statement. If I wanted him to be very specific, to catch like a 404, perhaps I deal with that differently than I deal with a 401 or a 500, and I would potentially have multiple of these. Then what I would do is I would come here and say, create a new global error reference. And let's just call this error 500. And I'm going to deliberately make this the wrong kind. So I'm actually going to say that this is expecting an error code of 500. And the reason I'm doing this is because I want you to watch it break. Because even though we are getting an error, we're not getting a 500. And that is what we're looking for. So what I'm trying to highlight here is that you can be globally catching of the errors that happen, or you can be specific. So you've got to kind of decide what direction you want to go. I strongly recommend that you're specific. So we come over here, we deploy it, we run it, and it's pausing here because it's retrying, and here we go. And if we look at it, it actually says exactly what we expected it to say. Hey, I expected you to throw an error with the error code 404, but it was not caught. What I did see was a 500 though. So why don't we go change it? So now we're going to go back and we're going to click on this guy again. And this one say, we're okay with a 404. That'll be all right. So now we deploy that. We run it. And look, it did as we expected it to do. Okay, thank you. I hope this has been useful.